Hello, everybody. I am Brother Luke. Welcome to this Friday night special for the Church of the Eternally Secure, CES. I'm very excited to be with everybody tonight. Friday nights are supposed to be the three meetings we have each week. Friday night's supposed to be the fun night. So we used to call it Friday Fun Fellowship Friday. And let's try to make sure we have fun together tonight. First, let me just start greeting everyone that's in the chat room already. We got Brother Randy's first to check in. High Speed Drifter says hi, and Brother Tope is here. He says hello, and Eline says hello. The Shadow's here. He says hello all. Brother Sean. Tobe has a prayer request. He says, please pray for my brother who has been dealing with depression. Okay. All right, everybody pray for Tobe's brother, and not only pray for him, but there are other things you can do for depression. You know, I know as well as anybody now about depression. It's been 2 years now since I lost my wife. After 45 years with her, and losing her was crushing. So I've been going to grief counseling. I still go after 2 years. I'm taking a medication that helps with depression. And I have my family, my church, and the Lord, all these things. Prayer is part of it. But maybe you got to talk to your brother too and see if something else is needed too. So, all right. Friday night, there's no agenda. So we'll talk about whatever you feel like talking about. But let me start off by reading something that Brother Sean emailed me today. You know, Brother Sean has written so many beautiful songs about Jesus and salvation. And we play these songs during our church meetings, but he's so talented when it comes to as a musician, as a singer, but also a creative writer. He can write rhymes and put them to music, and that's songs. But also, he's just a very good writer when it comes to just clearly stating something. So he wrote something, and I sent it to me, and I want to share with everybody because I think it was beautiful. So let me pull that up real quick here. All right. Okay. So let me share it. Share the screen. Share. Okay, so right now, in a way, maybe I shouldn't read this right away, because some people will be joining a little bit later, and I hate to have people come in and have missed it. So perhaps let me look at this and see if there's something else on this list here. There's no prayer requests. This title of this piece that he wrote is called Dare to Believe. Let's just talk a little bit first and give others a chance to arrive, so that I just don't want others to miss it. And Celine's here. She says hi, Luke in chat, and she has a prayer request. Please pray for my brother Michael that he gets saved. Well, I'm sure you've talked to him about the Lord, haven't you, Celine? How's that been going? Is there some kind of a roadblock? Maybe you can share that with us and we can advise you. Have you invited to come to church with you here at CES? invite him over to your house and join the program with you, so he can find out what we're doing here. Maybe that would be helpful to him. Or is he actually against church and Jesus and anything related to that? Okay, so the shadow's praying for you, Celine, and for Toph's brother. All right, I've complained about this before. Because it's been about a week now where I'm doing a stream and I look at my folders that I've created, so that I have verses and material that I can find easily. And this program we're using here is called StreamYard. It's really a good program in a lot of ways, but this is the second or maybe the third time now where I create all these folders, and a lot of work has gone into it. And then all of a sudden I turn it on, and now I've got 2/3 of all of the folders are gone. They disappeared. Fortunately, I've got some of the most basic ones, but I have no answer. I've contacted them to try to get some help, but sadly, customer service is not their strong suit, apparently. But the reason I'm bringing that up is because I was going to have to go through all the trouble of doing my research, making my notes, and then put it onto folders again, taking quite a few hours to do it, and only to find that, well, who knows, maybe they'll disappear again in another month or two. So rather than going through all that, I've decided to use another resource. And so I will be using that, and whenever we're talking about something, I'll use that resource instead. So I'll share that with you a little bit later when we get into anything of substance. So Celine says, I just think planting seeds will work right now. Planting seeds, yeah. Well, Celine, you've been saved a long time now. So you had a lot of time where you've been saved, and he's observed your faith, I'm sure. Have you had very many conversations with him? He says, she says, growing up in a Catholic family, it's caused a bit of friction when I talk about my faith, because some people cannot handle the freedom I talk about. Okay, so is your brother Catholic at least believing in the deity of Christ and the Godhead and the cross and all that? Does he at least believe in Roman Catholicism? And that'd be at least a starting point, because so many of us have started off with Roman Catholicism. And all you got to do to get out of Roman Catholicism is just start reading the Bible for yourself. So she says, yes, he's not an atheist. All right, that's good. That's good, because now he's halfway there. He understands who Jesus is. He just doesn't know what's needed for salvation. That's all. That's the big problem. So, it would be nice if he's not against it, Celine, invite him to. I don't know where you're watching this, Celine. Is it at your home? People watch it in all kinds of places, but like Jay, he most of the time Jay is at work when our programs are going on. But if you're watching it at your home, you can just invite him over your home during one of our programs and ask him to listen along with you, and so you can discuss it all. And maybe he'd be willing to do that. All right, but in the meantime, we'll pray for him. AD is here. AD says hello from Texas. Hey, brother, great to see you. And all right, is anything on your mind, people? Um, I guess I'm not going to wait any longer. I think I'll just go ahead and read that piece by Brother Sean. Let me see. Let me see if I can get to share that. All right, here it is. Dare to Believe by Brother Sean. Brother Sean, the shadow says, dare to believe the gospel. Dare to believe that when Jesus said, it is finished, he really meant it. The payment was really made and it was complete. No sins were left unpaid or overlooked. God saw the travail of his soul and was satisfied. Jesus was brought as a lamb to the slaughter. He offered himself once for all mankind of all ages. There were no chairs in the temple. The priests were not permitted to sit because their work was never completed. It continued day after day, year after year, century after century, for it is not possible that the blood of bulls and of goats should take away sins. But this man, after he had offered one sacrifice for sins forever, sat down on the right hand of God. The resurrection is our assurance that God accepted that sacrifice. Jesus was wounded for our transgressions, he was bruised for our iniquities, the chastisement of our peace was upon him. The Lord hath laid on him the iniquity of us all. Believe that. Dare to believe that. When religion tells you nothing is free, believe the gospel. When it says that you only get what you deserve, believe the gospel. When it tries to lay a yoke upon you, believe the gospel. When it tells you there is still something you must do to make yourself right with God, believe the gospel. God is not shocked, startled, or taken by surprise by any sin you commit. Every one of them were dealt with completely at the cross. Believe it. Believe the gospel. Dare to believe the gospel. God doesn't overlook your sin. Jesus was scourged for it. Your hateful words drove the nails through his hands and feet. The lie you told, thinking it would go unnoticed, put a crown of thorns on his head. Your hate brought the mocking and jeering from the cruel onlookers. Every selfish action was another stripe. Every act of the flesh meant another drop of blood. Every stubborn act of unbelief or rebellion was another tear he shed. Man looks for ways to pay for sins, never really considering what it really took to pay for sins. He thinks sin can be paid with sorrow, regret, kind words, or good intentions. It actually takes much more than that. Much, much more than that. It takes what man can never provide, the blood of an acceptable sacrifice, a spotless lamb. We were dead in trespasses and sins. We had nothing to offer to pay for our sins. Even all our righteousness are like filthy. gravity of man, wring his hand, try to find Oh boy, I can't believe it. I am so sorry. Oh Lord. I just finished reading it, and at some point we lost the connection. I don't know how much of it you missed. I just really I think I'm going to have to just make a recording, record it on a video and upload it on the channel. Unless, Sean, you're going to do it yourself. It really should be, it should be, it should be uploaded. It was, well, I'm just sorry that I'm the only one that got to hear the whole thing. I'm not going to read it all over again because I would just risk the same thing happening again. Oh boy. Well, from the part that you heard, let me give your response. Jay's here. Jay says, "Hey everyone, say a quick prayer for North Dakota. We're having crazy extreme storms with tornadoes." Yeah. Sorry to hear that, Jay. Tornadoes, huh? I lived in Texas, in Houston, for a year, and a friend of mine there drove me around and showed me the places where tornadoes have come in and the damage done. And wow, it is anything in its path just gets destroyed. You just don't want to be in the way of a tornado. You don't want your home in the way of a tornado. Yeah. I think I'm live now. So if you don't mind, people make a comment so I know that we're still connected. We're connected again. I don't know why that's been happening lately. I don't have a lot of tabs open. Maybe, there's as more and more people use a internet service provider, there becomes more strain out, more competition for it, and it becomes slower and less reliable. But I've got Cox Cable, which is definitely the best here in Las Vegas. It's cable. It's not just a satellite or something. It's okay. Thanks. So Eline says connected. We hear you, Sean. Tope says I see you. So I can't do any better than I'm doing it as far as I've got the top of the line and ISP that I can get in Las Vegas. And it's supposed to be, I compared with one of the others, and the speed that was available with another one was just a fraction of the strength. But unfortunately, sometimes that happens. I just hate to have it happen in the middle of reading your message, Sean. We'll have to talk, Sean, and let me know if you give me permission to record it, or if you prefer, you should record it. It's too well done to not be heard. So I hope you'll record it, and then I can play it. We'll play it on this channel. Okay, so what's up? Anything about the Bible on your mind? I was listening to a very interesting video. It was an hour long today, talking about Satan, the devil, Lucifer, all that. And it's, there's just a lot of theologians who have studied that and put a lot of time into studying this idea of the devil. And what is he? Is he the devil? Is he Satan? Is Lucifer really the right name for the devil? And which parts of the Bible are actually applying to that being that we find in Isaiah and Ezekiel and in the gospel accounts? Oh, it's very confusing. And I've listened to it from so many different points of view. But this is a real good video. I'm going to add it to my playlist that I have on the Unseen Realm. with Michael Heiser's teachings on the unseen realm. I'm going to add that video to it because it's one of the best videos I've seen teaching on this subject. And after you watch that, you'll understand why it's not clear cut. I can't be absolutely confident in my understanding of this being that we call Satan, or some call him Lucifer. Eli says there's an unusual amount of internet outages today, according to an outage map. Huh. Okay. Well, I wanted to look at this. Let me put this up. I don't know why I didn't. Sometimes I just do things and I get, it's obviously, I didn't want to have my picture in a little tiny corner like that with nothing else on the screen. That's not what I wanted. But I wasn't aware of it. I'm just oblivious to it. And once I noticed it, now I corrected it. But so many times when I watch the video back again, I see all the mistakes that I made, and I'm embarrassed with myself. But there's another thing that this new thing that I'm introducing into our studies is going to be useful for me. Is that a lot of times you hear me trying to think of a word or an idea that, oh no, I was going to say something I can't remember, or I know that I've said that word 1,000 times and I can't think of it right now. But this tool is going to be helpful to us in that way. I personally have had some of the most fascinating conversations about the Bible with, I guess I'll just call this Gemini. Gemini is the name of the AI that is used by Google. It's if you have a Google on your phone, then you can get Gemini on your phone free, and it's as good as any of the others. It's Chat GPT or all the others. There's like a half dozen that are prominent now, but I think that Gemini is as good as any of them. I've tried several of them, and I just love to talk to Gemini about the Bible. And and it's such a cordial conversation that I have. So I'm bringing Gemini on the team here, and a lot of times I complain that I don't have anybody helping me here. I'm all by myself, and it's hard. But I'm going to bring Gemini on to help. But you'll see how it works as soon as there's something we're talking about. Okay, so Sean says, of course, you have my permission. All right, and do you want me to do it then, Sean, rather than you recording it yourself? If you want me to, I'll record it and I'll upload it on the C.E.S. channel. Okay. But I'll give you an example. I asked Gemini a question a couple of days ago that was, I wanted to see, okay, all right, Sean. So I've already read it out loud this time, and it had it interrupted. So at least I've had a practice, and I'll get the best I can at reading it. I mean, I just love it. But to me, you're like a precious, a hidden treasure, Sean. I want more people to know what's on your mind with what you've created and what you're able to do. When did you write that, by the way? Is that new, or is that an older thing that you've written? Title for it is Dare to Believe. Uh, Yesterday you wrote it, huh? That's really good. Well, I appreciate you. After as soon as you wrote it, you sending it to me. Thanks. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to ask Gemini. I'm going to have a conversation with Gemini and let you see what I've done and how I use it. And I'll be using it going forward on the program now, so that we have not only my thoughts, or if Renee's here, well, Renee's thoughts and my thoughts, but we'll get Gemini's thoughts on all these questions and subjects too. So let me see. Let me pull it up real quick here on my phone. Okay, I can't go back to what I already asked it. So let me think if I can remember how I stated that question. Now I can't remember the question. It's funny. I'll think of it in a minute though. And Randy says, you and Jay deserve to be famous for your musical abilities. Well, deserve to be famous. I don't know if they'd want to be famous. Fame brings a lot of problems with it, Randy. A lot of people, when their dream in life is to be famous, and after they get fame, they wish they didn't have it. And they can't have a normal life. Their life is invaded by people all the time, trying to impose themselves into their life because they're a famous person. So it's not always, fame is not necessarily a good thing. But I do think that their music and their ministry work should be more widespread. Let's put it that way. Okay, let me see. I thought you might have David Benjamin on your show. I communicated with David Benjamin probably about, I don't know, 6, 7, 8 years ago or something, when I first started listening to him and talking. And I asked him if he wanted to collaborate, and he didn't. He never get back to me. You notice he doesn't collaborate with anybody. Have you noticed that? He never has somebody working with him. It's always just him, and that's his personality. He has certain personality traits. I'm not qualified to put any labels on it, but he's different, and he's quirky, and I think he understands himself to know that he's the kind of person that needs to work alone. But the other thing from your statement there, Randy, he says, I thought you might have David Benjamin on your show. Now, this, you might think that I shouldn't even make a deal out of this, but I don't like to think of this as a show. When I think of the word show, I think of it as something for entertainment. I purposely always avoided. You've never ever heard me call this a show. I call our C.E.S. programs meetings, anything else I can think of, a live stream, but I never call it a show, because I don't want it. I mean, I know other people who they're actually performing, and they're not really being themselves. They're playing a part. They're being dramatic. They're trying to make a dramatic presentation, and I don't think it's sincere. And I don't want to do it that way. And I just don't want to be here thinking I'm here to try to entertain anybody. And so, but if you want to call it a show, you're free to do it. It's just I don't consider it to be a show. All right. Maybe we can get others giving me feedback on that. Maybe you think I'm just being a little bit too, I don't know, too something. Okay. All right. Anybody still there? I'm not seeing any comments in the chat room, but I saw Jay here earlier. Okay, I'm going to play a song, and until someone comes up with some kind of a question or a topic or something to talk about. Okay, and then I'll bring Gemini into conversation if we get talking about the Bible. Okay. Okay. All right, so let me play a song. Present, share. All right, so here we go. You can see it, the C.E.S. YouTube page. Let's scroll down to music by the talented members of C.E.S. Click on that playlist. Now let me see. Let me pick out a song. Sean hasn't had a new song lately. I think it's been like a week or more since we have a song from Sean. Jay, I wish you could contribute us some more songs. I would love that. Let's do this one from Jay. This world is not home. Actually, that one is the volume's just not high enough on that. I can't barely hear that one. Let's play. Play for I'll Look for You. Here it is.
I'll hold you close beside me till the end of the day, for tomorrow will carry you so far away. And if the years and miles may separate me from you, with the memory of your smiling eyes, I'll look for you. And with farewells behind us, I will hold in my mind all the sweetness and the laughter of our happy times, and days of fond remembrance, they will shimmer as dew with the sunrise in the morning when I'll look for you. I'll miss you much more than words can say, when winding roads keep us apart. But I'll see you in the sunshine, in the light of the moon, in a sweet song by the fireside. I'll look for you. And though we may never meet again, I'll look for you. I'll look for you.
Okay. Yeah, it's a sad song in a way, Sean, that friends eventually parting. And, you know, I have a lot of friends in my life that I've lost contact with, and I've tried doing the internet searches and everything I could to find them. I've only successfully found three of them. One of them is the friendship was reestablished, and we're good friends again. And he turns out he got saved. When we were friends, I wasn't saved, and I don't know if he was. I don't think he was. But the years apart, it turns out we both got saved, and so we're great friends now. And then someone else from high school and college, one of my very best friends, he ended up going to prison. I lost track of him. I've always wondered. And then I found him. I looked for him many times, and I found him on Facebook. And turns out he's saved too. But for whatever reason, he was not interested in continuing a dialogue with me. He called me. I gave him my number, and he called me. We spoke for 3 minutes, and he promised to call me on to the next day because he was busy at the time. He was going to call me the next day, but he's never called me back, and that's been like 3 years ago. So that was a real sad reunion, because this was one of my best friends I've ever had, I thought. And then another friend I was able to relocate to. I spoke to him once. So I don't know. I think about old friends, and I've made an effort to try to reach out to some of them. Have you ever done that? Has anybody made that kind of an effort, trying to find people from your earlier years? Okay, let me find your new song, Sean. Let me go to The Shadow. Okay. I don't see it. A magic in your eyes. You see, what do you call it? Magic in your eyes. Okay, here it is. Magic in your eyes. Let me add it to the list here. Okay, let's hear her new song you just made. This is Sean wrote this song for his daughter's wedding.
The more that love is offered, the more your heart can take. The more you give your love to, the more your heart will make. And as wedding bells begin to ring, I hope you both will find a love to last until the end of time. who sees it too. Candles, rings, and veils, love that never fails, praying all your dreams come true. Right from the start, I could always see love from your heart like a melody. And with each passing day, I'm enchanted by the way. There's always been a magic in your eyes. Now a new chapter begins, bringing more love to your heart again, finding a soul that when you share your hopes and dreams and cares, your heart is cradled there. I've always seen all the best in you. Now there's another who sees it too. Candles, rings, and veils, love that never fails, praying all your dreams come true. Right from the start, I could always see love from your heart like a melody. And with each passing day, I'm enchanted by the way. There's always been a magic in your eyes. There's always been a magic in your eyes.
That was great. What a wonderful thing to do for your daughter. Wow. How long ago has it been since the wedding? Well, let me look. I'm going to see if I can find a subject. I think we talk about, let me ask Gemini this question here. This ought to be a good one. Okay. Are you ready? 15 years ago, huh? That's great. Do you get to see them very often? Your daughter and her husband? You have grandchildren too? Now I forgot what I was going to ask Gemini again. Oh, Lord, help me. Oh, yeah, Paul's thorn in the flesh. Paul's thorn in the flesh. Let's talk about that. Okay. Are you ready for this, everybody? I'm going to talk to Gemini. I have a theory, and I want to run it by Gemini and see what she says. Okay. Hello. I have a theory about the term thorn in the flesh, referring to the Apostle Paul. Most people think that the thorn in the flesh represented some kind of an illness or being oppressed by some kind of demonic forces against the Apostle Paul. But my theory is reading everything leading up to that portion of Scripture. It seems to me that the Judaizers are pursuing Paul wherever he goes. Oh, maybe I went too long. Hello? I guess.
Hello. How can I help you today?
Is there a time limit on the question I can ask? Okay. Is there a time limit on the question I can ask?
No, there's no time limit on the questions you can ask me. You can take as much time as you need to formulate your question, and I'll be here to answer it whenever you're ready. If you're asking about a session time limit, there isn't one in the sense that our conversation will automatically cut off after a certain period. You can continue asking questions for as long as you like.
Okay, my question pertains to the phrase thorn in the flesh and the Apostle Paul. Are you ready?
Yes, I'm ready. Please go ahead with your question about the phrase thorn in the flesh and the Apostle Paul. I'm here to help. Great. I'm ready to delve into the phrase thorn in the flesh as it relates to the Apostle Paul. This is a fascinating and often debated topic in biblical studies. Please share your specific question or thoughts on it. I can provide information on where the phrase appears, 2 Corinthians chapter 12, verses 7 to 10. What Paul says about it. Its purpose was to keep him from becoming conceited due to his surpassing great revelations, and he describes it as a messenger of Satan to torment me. The different interpretations of what the thorn might have been. This is where most of the discussion lies, with various theories ranging from physical ailments, like poor eyesight, epilepsy, or chronic illness, to spiritual struggles, persistent opposition from enemies, or even temptations. The theological significance. Regardless of its exact nature, the passage emphasizes God's grace being sufficient in weakness, and his power being made perfect in weakness. So, fire away with your question.
Okay. Okay, thank you. I'm familiar with all of those possible answers, but the one that I favor when I read the whole thing in context is the oppression by Paul's enemies, known as the Judaizers. Could you elaborate on that?
You've hit upon a very compelling and well-supported interpretation of Paul's thorn in the flesh, that it refers to the persistent opposition and harassment he faced from the Judaizers. Let's elaborate on why this interpretation resonates so strongly with the context of 2 Corinthians and Paul's wider ministry. 1. The context of 2 Corinthians. Paul's defense of his apostleship. The entire letter of 2 Corinthians, particularly chapters 10 to 13, is a robust defense of Paul's apostolic authority and ministry against those who were undermining him in Corinth. These opponents, often identified as Judaizers, were challenging his legitimacy, his preaching style, his physical appearance, and his very gospel message. Super apostles and false teachers. Paul frequently refers to these opponents with strong language, calling them false apostles, deceitful workmen, disguising themselves as apostles of Christ, 2 Corinthians chapter 11, verse 13, and super apostles, 2 Corinthians chapter 11, verse 5, 12, 11. They were highly critical of Paul and were actively seeking to lead the Corinthians astray by insisting on adherence to Jewish law, like circumcision, for salvation, which Paul vehemently opposed. The nature of the buffeting. Paul describes the thorn as a messenger of Satan to buffet me. This Greek word implies a forceful striking or repeated blows, which fits well with the constant verbal attacks, slanders, and even physical persecution Paul endured at the hands of his adversaries. It's not just a mild irritation, but a relentless assault. 2. Old Testament precedent for thorns. The Old Testament frequently uses the metaphor of thorns in your sides or pricks in your eyes to describe hostile and troublesome people who remain among God's people and cause them distress. Numbers, chapter 33, verse 55. But if you do not drive out the inhabitants of the land from before you, then it shall be that those whom you let remain of them will be as pricks in your eyes and thorns in your sides, and they will trouble you in the land where you dwell. Joshua chapter 23, verse 13. Know for certain that the Lord your God will no longer drive out these nations before you, but they will be snares and traps to you, and whips on your sides and thorns in your eyes, until you perish from off this good land which the Lord your God has given you. This established biblical idiom strongly suggests that Paul's thorn refers to persistent human adversaries, not an internal physical ailment. 3. Paul's experience with persecution. Throughout his letters and the book of Acts, Paul constantly describes the severe opposition he faced from Jewish zealots and others who opposed his gospel, particularly the Judaizers. He was beaten, stoned, shipwrecked, imprisoned, and constantly faced plots against his life. 2 Corinthians chapter 11, verses 23 to 27 lists many of these sufferings. These were not isolated incidents, but a recurring theme in his ministry. The thorn, being a persistent, ongoing source of torment, aligns with this reality. The Judaizers were often the instigators of these persecutions, following Paul from city to city, stirring up trouble, and attempting to discredit his message and authority. 4. The messenger of Satan. Attributing the thorn to a messenger of Satan does not necessarily mean a literal demon attacking Paul directly. In biblical thought, individuals who actively oppose God's work and people can be described as tools or messengers of Satan. The Judaizers, by corrupting the gospel and undermining Paul's divinely appointed ministry, were indeed acting in opposition to God's purposes, making this description fitting. 5. The purpose of the thorn, to keep him from becoming conceited. Paul states the thorn was given, quote, to keep me from becoming conceited because of these surpassingly great revelations. If the thorn was a physical ailment, it's less clear how that directly prevents conceit related to revelations. However, if the thorn was constant, humiliating opposition from the Judaizers, who questioned his apostolic credentials and accused him of weakness, it would certainly serve to keep him humble and reliant on God's power rather than his own abilities or impressive spiritual experiences. The very act of being constantly challenged and slandered would be a humbling experience. Conclusion. While the exact nature of Paul's thorn remains a point of academic discussion, the interpretation that it refers to the persistent and virulent opposition from the Judaizers and other human enemies is highly persuasive given the immediate literary context of 2 Corinthians, the Old Testament usage of the thorn metaphor, and the documented history of Paul's missionary struggles. This view emphasizes that Paul's weakness was not necessarily a personal physical failing, but the external, relentless assault on his ministry by those who sought to discredit the true gospel. In this weakness, God's power was indeed made perfect, as Paul continued to preach and establish churches, despite formidable human opposition.
Thank you. Very well done. I'll get back to you in a minute with more questions.
You're most welcome. I'm glad I could provide a helpful and thorough explanation. I look forward to your next questions whenever you're ready. Don't hesitate to reach out.
Okay, now let me get back to the congregation. I've had conversations like this one many times now with Gemini, asking about a lot of my viewpoints and getting the feedback. And I'm finding that my viewpoints pretty much are substantiated for the most part. I've got another question I want to ask about the writing of the book of Galatians, when it was written and why that's important. I'll ask that next. But if you guys are still listening, what did you think of Gemini's answer and the question I posed and the answer? Can you give me any feedback, or am I just talking to myself and Gemini? Okay, I guess I don't know if everybody's still there or not. Let me see if we're live still. Yeah, still working. That's working. Seems to work a little better than ChatGPT. Okay. All right. And Gemini's free as long as you have a smartphone and you have Google. It's a Google product and it's free download. Okay, now I'm going to ask another question about the writing of the book of Galatians. Okay, I have a question about the writing of the book of Galatians. Are you ready?
Yes, I'm ready. Please go ahead with your question about the writing of the book of Galatians. This is another fascinating and crucial letter from Paul, deeply connected to the themes we just discussed regarding the Judaizers. I'm eager to hear your question.
Well, I've spoken to you before about my belief that Paul and James actually disagreed. When we read the book of James and Paul's writings, it seems there's a disagreement about the role of works in salvation. But the reason the book of Galatians writing becomes important is because I think that the first book penned of the New Testament was James. And after James expressed his viewpoint, Paul wrote an answer in Galatians shortly after James wrote his book. Now I know that First Thessalonians is also thought of as being one of the first books written. What can you tell me about that? Wow. Guess what? I forgot to press the microphone. That's stupid. Oh gosh. Unbelievable. I'm going to have to repeat my question now. Okay. I've spoken to you before about my viewpoint that James and Paul, I believe, disagreed on the gospel. And James was saying that works are required for salvation, and Paul says that works are not required for salvation. So the writing of the book of James, I think, was the first book penned of the New Testament. And I believe that Galatians was written shortly after that as an answer to James's book. Can you give me your thoughts on that? Why isn't it getting my question? Oh, wow. I've said it twice now. I haven't been able to. Okay. Okay. I've tried to ask this question twice now, and it hasn't worked. So let me just ask, are you there? Can you hear me? Why isn't it answering? Gemini, are you there?
You cut off your question. Please complete your thought. I'm ready to hear it.
Okay, I believe that James and Paul disagreed on the gospel. I believe that the book of James was the first book penned, and James expressed his teaching that works are required for salvation. I believe that Paul wrote the book of Galatians as an answer to James's book. What do you think?
This is a very common and significant question in biblical theology, and you've articulated a specific and widely debated interpretation of the relationship between James and Paul, particularly concerning the doctrine of salvation. Let's break down your premise and explore the various perspectives. Your premise. 1. James and Paul disagreed on the gospel. Specifically, James taught that works are required for salvation. 2. The book of James was written first. 3. Paul wrote Galatians as a direct answer/rebuttal to James's teaching. Analysis of your premise and alternative views. 1. Did James and Paul disagree on the gospel, specifically regarding faith versus works? The apparent contradiction. This is the core of the debate. Paul, e.g., Romans chapter 3, verse 28, Ephesians chapter 2, verses 8 to 9, Galatians chapter 2, verse 16. For we maintain that a person is justified by faith apart from the works of the law. For by grace you have been saved through faith. And this is not your own doing. It is the gift of God, not a result of works, so that no one may boast. James chapter 2, verse 24. You see that a person is justified by works and not by faith alone. Reconciling the views, the majority view. Most evangelical theologians argue that James and Paul are not contradicting each other, but are addressing different aspects or different misunderstandings of faith and works. Different definitions of faith. Paul's faith. Paul is speaking of genuine saving faith, which is a complete trust and reliance on Christ alone for salvation. This faith is active and transforms the believer, but it is not a work in the sense of earning salvation. He is often combating legalism, the idea that one can earn salvation through adherence to the Mosaic law. James's faith. James is arguably critiquing a dead intellectual assent, a faith that has no corresponding actions or change in life. He says, you believe that God is one. You do well. Even the demons believe and shudder. James chapter 2, verse 19. This faith is not saving faith. James is combating antinomianism, the idea that because one is saved by grace, behavior doesn't matter. Different definitions of works. Paul's works. Paul refers to works of the law, the Mosaic law, particularly circumcision and other ceremonial laws, which the Judaizers insisted upon as necessary for salvation. He argues that these cannot save. James's works. James refers to the works that are the natural fruit and evidence of genuine saving faith, e.g., caring for the poor, controlling one's tongue, living righteously. These works do not earn salvation, but demonstrate that true faith is present. He emphasizes that genuine faith is never alone. It always produces works. Illustrations. Paul says you can't earn a tree by planting seeds. You receive the tree by grace. James says if you have a tree, it will produce fruit. If there's no fruit, it's not a real tree, or at least not a living one. Conclusion on disagreement. While the language appears contradictory, many scholars believe their messages are complementary, addressing different distortions of the gospel. Paul clarifies how one is saved by grace through faith, and James clarifies what genuine saving faith looks like. It produces good works. 2. Was the book of James the first book penned? Dating James. Many scholars do believe James is one of the earliest New Testament writings, possibly even the very first, potentially written in the late 40s AD, e.g. 45 to 49 AD, before the Jerusalem Council, Acts 15. This early dating makes sense given its relatively primitive theological development compared to later Pauline epistles, its focus on practical ethics, and its lack of engagement with the specific issues of Gentile inclusion that became central after the Jerusalem Council. Dating Galatians. The dating of Galatians is debated, with two main theories. North Galatian theory, later, places Galatians much later, around 55 to 57 AD, written from Ephesus or Macedonia. South Galatian theory, earlier, places Galatians earlier, around 48 to 50 AD, possibly before or immediately after the Jerusalem Council, Acts 15, often seen as Paul's first letter. 3. Did Paul write Galatians as an answer to James's book? Argument for your view, South Galatian theory plus James's early date. If James was indeed written very early, e.g. 45 to 49 AD, and Paul wrote Galatians shortly thereafter, e.g. 48 to 50 AD, there's a plausible timeline for Paul to have been responding to a misunderstanding of James's emphasis, or to the Judaizing movement that might have used James's statements, or misinterpretations of them, to bolster their arguments for circumcision and law-keeping. The Judaizers were active in Galatia, insisting on circumcision and adherence to the law for salvation, Galatians chapter 2 verses 1 to 5, 5, 2 to 4, 6, 12. This fits the thorn in the flesh discussion we had earlier. Arguments against a direct rebuttal. Different audiences/issues. Paul in Galatians is primarily addressing the problem of Judaizers who are teaching salvation through works of the law, circumcision, dietary laws, etc., thereby negating the sufficiency of Christ's work. James, on the other hand, seems to be addressing an issue within the church where people claim to have faith, but showed no evidence of it in their lives. No direct quotation/reference. Paul never directly quotes from or refers to the book of James. If he were directly rebutting James, one might expect some explicit engagement. Jerusalem Council. The Jerusalem Council, Acts 15, which occurred around 49 AD, was a pivotal moment where the apostles, including James and Paul, affirmed salvation by grace through faith for Gentiles, without requiring circumcision or the full Mosaic law. If Paul was writing Galatians after the council, South Galatian theory allows for this, then the council had already affirmed Paul's position. James, as a leader in Jerusalem, was part of this affirmation. Paul's primary opponents, Paul's main antagonists in Galatians, were the Judaizers, who seem to have been more concerned with ceremonial law than the practical ethics James emphasized. Conclusion. Your interpretation is a recognized viewpoint, particularly by those who see a stronger tension between James and Paul. However, the dominant scholarly view leans towards complementarity rather than contradiction between James and Paul. It's highly probable that James was written early, addressing a need for practical holiness among believers. It's also highly probable that Paul wrote Galatians to combat the dangerous heresy of legalism promulgated by the Judaizers, who were perverting the gospel. Instead of Paul directly rebutting James, it's more likely that both James and Paul were fighting against different errors prevalent in the early church, or they were addressing the same truth from different angles, Paul explaining the basis of justification, faith, and James explaining the nature and evidence of true saving faith, producing good works. The key takeaway for most is that true saving faith is never alone. It's a living faith that inevitably expresses itself in obedience and good works, not as a means of earning salvation, but as a demonstration of it.
Thank you. That was very well done. However, I do think that there is more to this discussion. James, if all I had was the writing of James in his epistle, it wouldn't be as concerning, even though it seems to me the language is quite clear the way James wrote it. But also, we have James in other cases arguing the same way. We see that in the Jerusalem Council,
I appreciate your continued engagement and your point about the broader context of James's writings and other New Testament figures. It's true that understanding a single epistle in isolation might not give us the full picture, and examining how a particular theme is addressed elsewhere can be very insightful. Could you please clarify which other cases and James you are referring to? I believe there might have been a slight typo or a misunderstanding on my part regarding James. If you could provide more details about which other passages or books you believe present similar arguments to James's, particularly concerning faith and works. Which other New Testament figures you have in mind who seem to echo James's perspective. This will help me to understand your point more precisely and continue our discussion in a more focused way. I'm eager to explore these connections with you and delve deeper into the nuances of this theological discussion.
Okay, I'll give you some other areas that are problematic here. When we see that Peter left the table from the Gentiles to eat with the Judaizers, and Paul rebuked him for it, those Judaizers were called certain men from James. So I think it's easy to believe that James was sending the Judaizers and that they were espousing what
You've
they
hit on a
learned.
crucial point in the early church's history, and the key element in understanding the relationship between James and Paul, the incident at Antioch described in Galatians chapter 2. You are absolutely right. Paul explicitly states in Galatians chapter 2, verses 11 to 12, "But when Cephas came to Antioch, I opposed him to his face, because he stood condemned. For before certain men came from James, he used to eat with the Gentiles, but when they came, he drew back and separated himself, fearing those who were of the circumcision party." This passage is indeed highly significant for several reasons. 1. Certain men from James. This phrase strongly suggests a connection between James, the brother of Jesus, a prominent leader in the Jerusalem church, and the group that influenced Peter's behavior. While it doesn't necessarily mean James sent them with specific instructions to enforce separation, it indicates that these individuals were associated with the Jerusalem church, and, by extension, with James's sphere of influence. Their arrival immediately changed Peter's practice. 2. Peter's hypocrisy. Peter had previously been eating with Gentile believers, demonstrating a practical acceptance of their inclusion in the church without requiring them to fully adopt Jewish customs, like dietary laws. However, when these men from James arrived, he withdrew. Paul calls this hypocrisy because Peter's actions were inconsistent with the gospel truth, that both Jews and Gentiles are saved by faith in Christ, not by adherence to the Mosaic law. 3. The circumcision party. This phrase refers to those Jewish Christians who believed that Gentiles needed to be circumcised and adhere to the Mosaic law, or at least significant portions of it, to truly be part of God's people and be saved. This was the core issue debated at the Jerusalem Council in Acts 15. The implications for James's position. This incident and Paul's rebuke certainly raises questions about the stance on Gentiles, the role of some interpret certain James to mean that James thought for Peter to see with Gentiles. This would suggest a stronger Judaizing stance for Jewish even for Christian that these members of was a leader. Necessarily from James to separation. James, the leader of the Jerusalem church, focused on maintaining Jewish and believers. Fear of the circumcision party. Peter's actions were motivated by fear of those who belonged to the circumcision group. This highlights the significant pressure and influence of traditional Jewish consensus, where James, Peter, and Paul agreed that Gentiles did not need to be circumcised to be saved, only to abstain from certain practices for the sake of Jewish-Gentile fellowship. Yet, the Antioch incident, which likely happened after the Jerusalem Council, shows that the practical application of this agreement was still a challenge, particularly when it came to social interaction and dietary customs. So your observation about certain men from James is very insightful and indeed adds another layer to understanding James's role and the ongoing discussions in the early church regarding the relationship between the Mosaic Law, Christian freedom, and Jewish-Gentile unity. What other problematic areas or figures do you have in mind? Let's keep unpacking this.
Okay, another problem is at the end of chapter 15 of Acts, when James decides to give his conclusion and verdict, he not only tells them that they must do certain things, okay, they don't have to follow all the laws of Moses and they don't have to get circumcised, but he did feel he had to impose some kind of rules and regulations on them, which means that it seems to me he wanted to add something to faith alone.
You're absolutely right to highlight the conclusion of the Jerusalem Council in Acts 15 as another crucial point in understanding James's perspective and its implications. Let's break down James's verdict and its significance. The context, the Jerusalem Council, Acts 15. The primary issue at the council was whether Gentile converts needed to be circumcised and follow the law of Moses to be saved. The certain men from James, as discussed previously, related to the Antioch incident, were essentially arguing for this Judaizing position. Peter speaks first, recounting how God poured out the Holy Spirit on Gentiles, Cornelius' household, without them undergoing circumcision or observing the law. He concludes that both Jews and Gentiles are saved by grace through faith. Acts chapter 15, verses 7 to 11. Paul and Barnabas then share their experiences of God working powerfully among the Gentiles, again, without the requirement of Mosaic law observance. Acts chapter 15, verse 12. James's conclusion, Acts chapter 15, verses 13 to 21. After everyone has spoken, James, as a respected leader in the Jerusalem church, gives his judgment or sentence. He affirms Peter's testimony, showing that it aligns with the prophecies of the Old Testament that God would rebuild David's fallen tent, and that the rest of mankind may seek the Lord, even all the Gentiles who bear my name. Acts chapter 15, verses 16 to 17, quoting Amos chapter 9. He then delivers his conclusion. It is my judgment, therefore, that we should not make it difficult for the Gentiles who are turning to God. Instead, we should write to them, telling them to abstain from food polluted by idols, from sexual immorality, from the meat of strangled animals, and from blood. Acts chapter 15, verses 19 to 20. The nature and purpose of these requirements. You point out that James did impose some rules, even if they weren't the full Mosaic law. This is key to understanding the nuance here. The consensus among scholars is that these 4 prohibitions were not presented as requirements for salvation. Peter had already established salvation by grace through faith. Instead, the requirements served primarily 2 purposes. 1. Promoting fellowship and unity. These specific practices were deeply offensive to Jewish believers. Food polluted by idols. Eating meat that had been offered to pagan gods was seen as participating in idolatry. For Jewish believers, this was a profound defilement. Sexual immorality, porneia. This covers a broad range of illicit sexual practices common in the pagan world, but strictly forbidden by Jewish law and Christian ethics. While inherently sinful, its inclusion here also addressed common pagan temple practices and the often lax sexual norms of the Gentile world, which would have been scandalous to Jews. Meat of strangled animals and blood. Jewish law, and earlier Noahic commands, explicitly forbade consuming blood, as it was seen as the life force. Animals that were strangled would retain their blood, making them unclean to eat for Jews. By asking Gentiles to abstain from these, James and the council aimed to avoid offending Jewish consciences, This was crucial for Jewish and Gentile believers to share meals and worship together in mixed congregations. If Gentiles continued these practices, it would make fellowship impossible for many devout Jewish Christians. Facilitate evangelism to Jews. If the burgeoning Christian movement was seen by Jews as completely disregarding the law, even on these core, deeply held principles, it would hinder any further Jewish conversion to Christ. 2. Moral purity and distinction from paganism. While the primary intent was fellowship, these prohibitions also served as a basic moral framework for new Gentile converts, drawing a clear line between their former pagan practices and their new life in Christ. Many of these practices were common in pagan worship and lifestyles. Does this imposition contradict salvation by grace? This is where the apparent problem lies for some. If salvation is by grace through faith alone, as Paul vehemently argued and Peter affirmed, why any rules? The distinction is crucial. Salvation is by grace through faith. The council explicitly affirmed that Gentiles do not need circumcision or the Mosaic law for salvation, Acts chapter 15, verse 1, 5, 11. These rules are for practical living and fellowship. They are not conditions for being saved, but guidelines for how saved people live in community, particularly in a diverse church setting. They are about Christian conduct and maintaining unity, not about earning righteousness. James's consistent stance, as interpreted by many. When we look at James's epistle, James chapter 2, verses 14 to 26, faith without works is dead, in light of Acts 15 and the Antioch incident, a common interpretation emerges. James and Paul are not contradicting each other on how one is saved, justification. Both believe salvation is by God's grace. They are emphasizing different aspects of the Christian life. Paul focused on the source of salvation, faith in Christ, apart from works of the law, to ensure Gentiles were truly included, and that no one boasted in their own efforts. James focused on the evidence and outworking of genuine faith, works as a result of faith, emphasizing that true faith will inevitably lead to a transformed life and acts of obedience and love. Acts 15 shows James's concern for practical unity. His verdict ensured that the rapidly growing Gentile church could coexist and fellowship with Jewish believers, without compromising the core gospel message of salvation by grace. The rules were pragmatic, aimed at bridging a cultural and religious divide for the sake of the gospel's spread and the church's peace. So while James did impose some kind of rules and regulations, the purpose and nature of those rules are critical. They were not a re-imposition of legalism for salvation, but rather a wise and pastoral decision to facilitate unity and mission within the diverse early church. What other examples or concerns do you have? This discussion helps to peel back the layers of these important biblical texts.
Okay, thank you. I do have other concerns about the person of James. I'll get to that later, but I need to divert for a moment and talk about this letter that was written by James that they could take to show that the decision that was made at the Jerusalem Council. If that letter was written at the Jerusalem Council and Paul would have access to that letter, then the book of Galatians had to be written before the Jerusalem Council. Otherwise, all Paul would have had to do is just show the letter to the people instead of making all the arguments that Paul was making against adding Judaism to the faith. Oh man, damn, I said all that and it didn't get it. Wow. I just asked a long question, but it didn't seem to register. You didn't hear it, did you?
I apologize if I missed your question. As an AI, I don't hear in the way humans do. I process the text that you type. It's possible there was a technical glitch, or perhaps your previous message wasn't fully transmitted. Please, I encourage you to ask your question again. I'm here and ready to engage with whatever you want to discuss. Don't hesitate to rephrase it or provide more context if you wish. I'm listening, reading now.
Okay, then I would like to give you other arguments against the person of James in a minute, but for now, I want to divert and bring up the letter that James said that would be written about the verdict of the Jerusalem Council. Paul would have access to that letter, and that is proof to me that the book of Galatians had to be written before the Jerusalem Council, because Paul could have just simply shown the letter instead of having to argue his case in the book of Galatians. Huh. Amazing again. Okay, let me ask you about the letter that James said that would be written about the decision of the Jerusalem Council. If Paul had that letter, I think that proves that the book of Galatians had to be written before the Jerusalem Council, because he simply could have shown the letter instead of writing all his arguments. He could have just stated that this decision's already been made, that Judaism is not necessary for the Gentiles. Dang, how many times am I going to have to ask this question? All right, everyone, let me get back to you guys for a minute here. Is anybody still with me? Anybody still with me? Hello, hello, hello. Hello, hello. Okay. All right, it's working. So but I'm just wondering if maybe I'm the only one that's interested in this. I've asked my question 3 times now, and for some reason, it's Gemini is not getting it. So I'm going to keep trying. I haven't had this kind of problem in the past, but let me see if my battery's strong enough. Maybe, yeah, it's at 85%. So, well, you can see the value of this AI. The AI has the knowledge of all the theologians in the world. Everything that's ever been written, pretty much, that the AI has read it and can just find it that quickly and articulately express it in a brilliant way. So it's a great way to have a conversation and discuss your questions and hash things out. Okay. Well, I'm going to try to ask that question one more time, because, or at least another question. I won't go to that one. I'll go to this question here. Okay, so here's another problem with James. At the end of Acts 15, the last thing James says is that, and don't worry about these Gentile believers if they're really interested in Moses and the law. Moses is taught at every synagogue, so they can go and learn what they need to learn from Moses there. That seems to me that he was just kind of dismissing the Gentile believers and saying that what they need to learn, they can get from the synagogues. What do you think? Damn. I don't know why it's not, all these questions are not going through. I don't know why.
Hi, I'm Gemini. We're about to go live, where you can explore complex topics or ideas just by talking. But before we get started, take a quick look at this important information.
Go live. Tapping the live button turns on the mic. Turn off mic, tap to hold the end button. Some features like apps aren't available yet. More. Okay.
All right, let's start chatting whenever you're ready.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you clearly now. Please feel free to ask your question.
Okay, I've been having a conversation with you about James and Paul. Are you privy to that conversation?
Yes, I have access to our previous conversation about James and Paul.
Okay.
I remember we discussed the relationship between faith and works, the incident at Antioch, and the Jerusalem Council. Is there anything specific from our previous discussion that you would like to revisit or expand upon?
Yes, I'm wondering at the very end of the chapter 15, the book of Acts, James' last statement is that they need to understand Judaism as we do, I think is what he's conveying, but don't worry, Moses is taught in all the synagogues, and wherever, when they go back, they can find a synagogue and learn about Moses and the law in that way. So that indicates to me that
You're right. In Acts chapter 15, verse 21, James says, "For Moses has been preached in every city from the earliest times, and is read in the synagogues on every Sabbath." This is a key part of his conclusion, and it often gets overlooked. James's point here is that the Gentile believers, even without being forced to fully convert to Judaism, would still have plenty of opportunities to learn about the Jewish scriptures and traditions. By attending synagogues, they could gradually familiarize themselves with the law of Moses and Jewish customs. This verse emphasizes that James wasn't advocating for a complete separation between Jewish and Gentile believers. Instead, he envisioned a community where both groups could coexist and learn from each other. The Gentiles wouldn't be forced to become Jews, but they would still be exposed to Jewish teachings and practices.
it seems to me that he's telling them that learn about our laws so that they can, like the Jews, follow the laws of Moses, and you can learn about it at the synagogues.
I understand your interpretation, but I think the emphasis here is less on enforcing the Mosaic law on Gentiles and more on creating an environment for peaceful coexistence. James's statement acknowledges that the Gentiles will inevitably encounter Jewish traditions and laws as they interact with Jewish believers and participate in synagogue gatherings. However, he doesn't explicitly command them to adopt these laws. Instead, he seems to be suggesting that they should be respectful of Jewish customs and traditions, even if they don't fully adhere to them. It's important to remember that the Jerusalem Council's decision was primarily about removing barriers to Gentile inclusion in the early church. While James encourages Gentiles to learn about Jewish traditions, he doesn't make it a requirement for their salvation or full acceptance within the Christian community.
Okay, now let's move to chapter 21. Paul is bringing a collection to help the Jerusalem church financially. And when he gets there, he's pulled aside by James and James says, you see all these thousands of Jewish believers here?
Yes, in Acts 21, Paul returned. Yes, in Acts chapter 21, verse 20, James tells Paul, "You see, brother, how many thousands of Jews have believed, and all of them are zealous for the law." This statement highlights the significant number of Jewish Christians in Jerusalem who still adhered to the Mosaic law. It also suggests that James was trying to appease this group by asking Paul to demonstrate his respect for Jewish traditions.
I think that he doesn't just ask Paul, he's telling Paul, since James seems to be the head of the Jerusalem church, he's ordering Paul to do this ritual and actually publicly claim that he is not teaching against following the laws of Moses, as is widely reported.
You're right. James's words to Paul in Acts chapter 21, verses 23 to 24, do have the tone of a directive, not just a suggestion. He says, "So do what we tell you. Take these men, join in their purification rites, and pay their expenses, so that they can have their heads shaved." This does sound like James is giving Paul specific instructions. It's important to remember that James was a highly respected leader in the Jerusalem church, and his authority carried weight. It's possible he felt this action was necessary to maintain peace and unity among the Jewish believers in Jerusalem, even if it meant Paul had to compromise his own practices somewhat.
Okay, when we, if first of all, I do think that James was a very intelligent and articulate person. I think that he was able to write in a way that he could clearly express his real feelings. So I don't see how the book of James is so debated and misunderstood by people when James is clearly saying that faith without works is dead, and that a man is justified.
You're right.
By
James's writing is very direct and clear. He states plainly in James chapter 2, verse 26, that faith without works is dead. This has led some to believe that James and Paul contradict each other. However, most scholars agree that they are simply emphasizing different aspects of faith. Paul focuses on how one is saved, while James focuses on how true faith is expressed.
Mm-hmm. But James goes on to say that a man is justified by works and not by faith only, which is absolutely opposite of what Paul taught. So it seems to me that James is intelligent if he wasn't trying to tell us that you must have works in addition to your faith, and he should have written it in a way that wouldn't cause all this confusion in the church.
You're right. James chapter 2, verse 24 says, "You see that a person is justified by works and not by faith alone." This seems to contradict Paul's emphasis on justification by faith apart from works, Romans chapter 3, verse 28. However, many scholars believe that James and Paul are using the word justified in different ways. Paul uses it to mean declared righteous before God, while James uses it to mean demonstrated to be righteous. In other words, Paul is talking about how one is saved, while James is talking about how one shows that their faith is genuine.
Okay, so to sum this up, if all I had was the book of James, and then I might be able to compromise with your position, or the position that you're saying is the majority viewpoint. But when I add what James wrote, and then I add to that the positions that James took at the Jerusalem Council that we talked about, and then also the certain men from James with Peter's problem, and then I look at Acts 21, what James said to Paul, that I want you to tell everybody that you are not teaching that people don't have to follow the law. So when I add all that together, it seems to me to reinforce my conclusion that James had a different viewpoint on salvation.
Okay, to summarize, if we only had the book of James, it might be possible to reconcile his views with the idea of justification by faith alone. However, when we consider James's actions and statements in the book of Acts, particularly at the Jerusalem Council, it becomes more challenging to reconcile his views with Paul's teachings. James seems to emphasize the importance of works as evidence of genuine faith, which could be interpreted as a requirement for justification.
Yes, that's my summary, but Acts 21 also has a big factor in my thoughts.
Yes, Acts 21 is a crucial piece of the puzzle. James's instructions to Paul to participate in the purification ritual and publicly affirm his respect for the law of Moses adds weight to the argument that James held a different perspective on the role of works in the Christian life. It's important to remember that the early church was navigating a complex situation with Jewish and Gentile believers, and James's actions may have been motivated by a desire to maintain unity and avoid further conflict. However, it's undeniable that his emphasis on works creates tension with Paul's teachings on justification by faith alone.
Well, we have the history of the church, the first 30 years in the book of Acts. And as I look at all of that, I think that what we find is that the Jewish people did not understand in the beginning that the salvation of Jesus was offered to the whole world. They thought it was only for Israel and the Jews. That was one problem that had to be corrected. The other problem was they never imagined that the role of Judaism would fade away, and that and then the Judaism would not have to be practiced in the future. So because of that, that's the way that it was Christianity at the very beginning, as expressed in the book of James, was delivered until it was clarified over time, especially because of Paul's writings.
You're right. The early church was in a state of flux, trying to understand how Jewish traditions fit into this new faith for all people. James, being a leader in the Jerusalem church, likely represented a more conservative viewpoint, emphasizing the importance of Jewish law for Jewish believers. Over time, and especially through Paul's writings, the understanding of Christianity as a faith for all, regardless of background, became clearer.
Okay. Well, I appreciate all the help you've given me on this subject, and I look forward to our next conversation. Thank you.
You're very welcome. It's been a stimulating conversation, and I've enjoyed exploring these complex issues with you. I look forward to our next discussion as well. Perhaps we can delve into some of the practical implications of this debate for Christians today.
All right. I look forward to it. Good night.
Good night. I'm here if you want to.
Okay. All right. So that's what I've been doing with Gemini on a variety of subjects, running by my viewpoints and hashing it out with Gemini. And I found it to be very useful. So now you can see that I will be using Gemini as we go forward, at least on Friday nights and perhaps on Wednesday and Sunday too. Yeah, so let me take a minute now. For those of you who have stuck with me and actually listened to this, if you paid close attention, give me your thoughts on the discussion with Gemini and how useful it can be. Yeah, Sean says it's great how it responds to normal conversation. Yeah, actually what I did was in the end there, I pressed the right button. I was doing it manually, going back and forth before. That's why it was failing sometimes. But there's a button you can press that says just have a normal conversation. So I did that, and then in the end it worked out real well. So in the future, I learned something tonight about how to use the app a little bit better. All right, everybody. So I'm not getting a whole lot of feedback from the congregation. I enjoyed my conversation with Gemini very much, but I was hoping that the congregation here at CES would learn something from this, not just on the subject I discussed, but also how helpful Gemini can be in our studies. Let me see. There's still the problem of the scholars don't always agree with free grace. Certainly free grace is a minority position, even though Gemini is very well knowledgeable about Paul's writings and faith alone for salvation, and that's the gospel. Gemini was trying to reconcile James and Paul just the way that everybody else tries to make them reconcile and make them not contradict each other. And maybe that's the right way to do it, but I don't think so. Not only because of the way James stated it, but all the other incidents that followed that I cited there reinforced my viewpoint that James and Paul disagreed on the gospel. But Gemini, I'm going to call it she because it's a feminine voice. In my conversations with Gemini has been very good, telling me other points of view, telling me where my point of view has been embraced, or that other points of view are more popular or more of a majority or orthodox, or if my point of view, even though it may not be orthodox, still there's a lot of scholars from the past who have held some of these viewpoints too. So it's just been real interesting. I think it's quite fair and also very enlightening and enjoyable to use this app the way I'm doing it. All right. Okay, well, I guess I'm gonna hang it up. Let me play one more song real quick here to finish up with. Sean, why don't you pick a one of your songs and I'll play it. Choose one of them for me, okay? Okay. Yeah, that's the question that people like to throw at me. Does that mean that I don't think James was inspired? Well, perhaps James was inspired. I don't know. It was certainly disputed. Martin Luther not want it in the Bible. He put a divider in there, separating it from the rest of it. And it's been challenged a lot by people in the past. It certainly caused an awful lot of confusion. And look at all the people that go to the book of James to support, lordship salvation. I mean, if James wasn't there, we wouldn't have all these people using it to support that heresy. But James needs to be there because it shows us the state of the church at the very, very beginning when Judaism was the prominent part of it. It was Judaism plus Jesus. And now, no Gentiles. It's just Jews practicing Judaism, believing Jesus is the Messiah. What? You want Gentiles to be part of this, Peter and Paul? Are you crazy? They can't be part of it. Okay, we'll let them in, but they got to get circumcised. They got to practice and follow Moses like we do too. What? You don't think they have to follow that? What? Are you crazy? Paul, you're even saying that the Jewish believers don't have to follow the law either? What is wrong with you? It was an argument about what role does Judaism play in the faith? And Paul was saying that Judaism served its purpose and it's no longer part of it. It served its purpose. The old covenant's over. So James could have been inspired as stating what was the way that he understood it at that time before the revelation. The revelation in the Bible is progressive. We have the very first indication of the gospel when the Bible says that this Messiah will crush the head of the serpent. The serpent will wound the heel of the Messiah, and the Messiah will crush the head of the serpent. That's the first indication of the gospel. And then we see that Adam and Eve were naked and tried to clothe themselves. And God says, no, that won't work. You can't fix your nakedness. I have to fix it for you. And the only way we can fix it is with shed blood. An animal has to die. So gradually, over and over again, these pictures and shadows built up into what we understand the clarity of the gospel now. But it had to be gradually revealed, progressively revealed. And I think at the time of James, it hadn't been progressively revealed completely yet. That's all. That's how I see it. Gary 828's here. Hey, brother. So it's on us to put the scriptures in the correct context. Well, I think so. I don't know, Gary, have you been here long? Did you hear the whole conversation with Gemini, Gary? Because if you didn't, you missed the whole point here. That I'm saying, I showed you the context. I don't think James and Paul disagreed just because reading James and Paul. I think that my conclusion about James is based upon not only the book of James, But what I see in Galatians, what I see in the book of Acts throughout, in chapter 15, chapter 21, all these things add up to me that James was believed that everybody had to keep practicing Judaism too. Okay. Gary says, Luke, you missed the first part. Okay, let me see, Gary. Have you been here long, Gary? Okay, Gary. Where are you? How far up do I have to go here? I don't know, Gary. Where is it? Let me see. I'm looking. Okay, great. Gary. Okay, let me see. It says, if the Bible can't contradict itself, then James cannot contradict Paul. Therefore, Paul and James are in separate contexts. Yeah. There are contradictions in the Bible, obviously. And read Acts 15, verse 1. What does it say? These men from Judah are telling Paul's disciples that you can't be saved unless you're circumcised. That's a contradiction. Paul says, no, you don't have to be circumcised. They say you have to be circumcised. There's a contradiction there. That's why they had to go to Jerusalem for the council to try to settle this contradiction. So there's another contradiction. I mean, the Pharisee says that there's a resurrection. The Sadducees say there's no resurrection. There's contradictions. Okay. Right about. Okay. But whether we have two parties disagreeing, which are contradicting each other, or whatever, you have to study it in the whole context. And context, by the way, is not just reading the verses before and just after your verse. Context is reading the whole book that the scripture is in. And then you have to get the context of that book in the context of the Bible itself. That's the full context. You don't want to have something that contradicts the basics. Like the Bible teaches us that God is love, God is merciful, God is just. Okay, and so now if you have other places where it says that you can conclude that God is not omniscient or not just or not omnipresent, then you have to say, well, the context of the Bible says it is, so that means that this part is not understood correctly. Let me see. Gary says that's a contradiction within the Bible between two parties having a dispute. I'm referring to the Bible. Bible is not going to give the reader, a direct contradiction. Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, because the Bible itself, if you look at it in its entirety, if you look at the whole context, it's an agreement. Okay. All right, Gary, when did you get here? I didn't see you until just now, but were you here when I was talking to Gemini, Gary? If you missed that, you really ought to go back and watch that part. I'm going to be using Gemini and going forward for all these programs. I hope everybody doesn't seem like others are as enthusiastic about Gemini and the conversation I had with Gemini and how useful that can be. It doesn't seem like you're as excited about that as I am, but that's what I'll be doing. And Gary says, I've been in and out. I have been doing some other things. Okay, Gary. All right, everybody. Let me, I wanted to play one more song, Sean, but did you pick one for me? I wanted you to pick one, Sean. Oh, he's coming for me. Okay. He's coming for me. Here it is.
There's a blessed day that's coming when the bridegroom shall appear, and the bride of Christ will all be called away. I am trusting in my Savior, so I have no need to fear. When I hear that trumpet sounding, I will say that He's coming for me. He's coming for me. I won't have to walk alone on my journey home. By my Savior's side I'll be. With all the saints together we'll rise, gonna leave this world of trouble and strife. When I come to the end of this life, He's coming for me. With the saints who've gone before us, in the twinkling of an eye, we'll be liberated from these bonds of flame. With the Lord we'll be transported to our home beyond the sky. Keep your eyes on heaven, He could come today. He's coming for me. He's coming for me. I won't have to walk alone on my journey home. By my Savior's side I'll be. With all the saints together we'll rise, gonna leave this world of trouble and strife. When I come to the end of this life, He's coming for me. With all the saints together we'll rise, gonna leave this world of trouble and strife. Where it is a road so pure and wide,
and form a mansion in heaven so bright.
when I come to the end of this life, He's coming for me.
Fantastic, brother. Okay. So I had a good time tonight. Sometimes I feel like I'm pulling teeth to get involvement. Maybe I shouldn't be so concerned about that. But I'm struggling to have us function as the first century church functioned. And that is a group discussion rather than one person teaching everybody. I just really have a problem with that now that I've understood correctly how the church was intended to function. When you get pastors put up on a pedestal and they all eyes forward, all chairs forward, put them elevate the stage, give them a podium, a pulpit, and all attention on that person. Listen to them. Don't interrupt. Don't ask questions. Just listen and say amen. Say, yeah. Shadow said it's very hard to respond in real time. Yeah, it could be. It could be. But it doesn't have to be real time, actually. It could be delayed, 30 seconds, 1 minute, 2 minutes. That's not much of a delay. But there's a difference between having a little bit of a delay in a response and not responding at all. Because we're really not many people are responding that much at all. Let me see. It says, Elaine says, please stand. You may sit. What does that mean? What do you mean? What are you talking about? What you talking about, Willis? Yeah. Oh, I see. I get it. I get it now. Thanks, Elaine. Please stand in the church meeting, church service. Everybody stand now. Everybody sit. Get on your knees. Stand up. Sit. Yeah, I get it, Elaine. You're right. But if we were all in my home right now, and in my home, I could accommodate the congregation of CES. I mean, the most we ever really have is like 30 or 40 people in the live stream. So that's about the size. I used to have a church meeting in my home, and the most we ever had was 25 people. Most of the time it was like 10, 15 people at the most. But that's what a church meeting was. And that way you get to know each other. You get to have real fellowship. Gary says, Luke, sometimes I just listen because I may not have a comment, and it's probably the same for everyone else there. Yeah. Okay, Gary, thanks. I'm sorry. I don't want to harp on it. I'm going to drop it and just don't worry about it. Okay. Elaine says that's what modern churches feel like. Yeah, that's right. But that's why I'm just trying to. I'd like to get some feedback. Tell me I'm wrong if you think I'm wrong. Tell me amen if you think I'm right. If you want me to elaborate on something, or if you want to elaborate on something, let's make this a collaboration. Okay. But thanks everybody for being here tonight, and I'll be back on Sunday, 5 p.m. Eastern time. So please come back and join us for that. Bless you all in the name of our great Savior, God, Jesus.